It's the playoffs, and what does that mean? You got to lay body, get in those corners, big, physical, heavy hockey, whistles put away. Does it matter? And will it help you win a Stanley Cup if you're bigger and badder than your opponents? We're going to answer that question today. We're going to use some really key data from Dom Lucian over at The Athletic. I'm going to give you my reaction to his study and his data answering the question, does heavy physical hockey win Stanley Cups? And is it a prerequisite in today's playoff format? We're going to go through all the league's smallest players and talk about their performance issues, because there definitely is some. And then finally, I'm going to tell you how to beat it. And I'm going to tell you at the end of this video how I, as a hockey coach, play with teams who are heavy and play with teams who are skilled and light. Because I do think at the end of this, any team can really win regardless of size. But there's some truth to you people out there that think size wins championships. So let's get into it right now. And another thing that matters as much as size in the NHL is the choice of gambling site you use for the NHL playoffs this year. Head over to betus.com. Canadian or American residents over the age of majority get 125% playoff bonus to go ahead and smash bets here on hockey. All proceeds go to support this channel. They are the #1 and only sponsor of Hot Garbage Sports. So head over to betus.com, use code HTS or the link below if you haven't already. So first, let's go ahead and explore the data and answer the question over the last 10 years, does heavy hockey matter? And there are three things as a hockey coach that I see that make heavy hockey very important. And the first thing is time and space. What's time and space? It's your time to read a play. It's your time to react to the play. And then finally, it's your time to make a play. And when you're playing against teams that are heavier in the playoffs, when there's that threat of physicality breathing down the back of your neck at all points in time, your time to read a play, react to play, and make a play becomes smaller. You have less time to be able to do it. So skill, IQ, and instinct all add into your ability to do these three things, and it gets totally messed up by heavy and aggressive teams in the playoffs. Number two is the increased intensity in the playoffs. There's a sense of urgency for all players. This isn't the regular season, folks. We all know it. Every game matters. Every shift matters. Every player on line 1 to line 4, pair 1 to pair 3, and the goaltender has a do or die sense of urgency. Their lives are on the line and they're fighting like it matters. That takes away further time and space. There's also a rivalry factor to this. We all know how the playoffs work out, and we all know the pride of the players that want to win the Stanley Cup. They want to beat their rivals, and there have been some legendary rivalries in the playoffs. Detroit, Colorado, Vancouver, and Boston really hated each other for a moment there, it felt like. But really, it was more Vancouver and Chicago, wasn't it? And that was a weird one there. Then there's finally pride. There's pride of being a champion and bringing it home. So that all contributes to increased intensity in the playoffs. And then finally, number 3 is the physical wear and tear that goes on your body, not only in the playoffs, but when playing against heavy teams. Look, there are factors that go into this. And the number one thing is luck. You all know an athlete or a friend that just never gets injured. They're like putty. It doesn't matter how big they are. They never get injured, but there's a luck factor. Every time you take a hit in hockey, take a stride, there's a chance it could be your last one. It's a physical game. The second thing that plays into this is your genetics. Some people are just genetically predispositioned to have more muscle mass, heavier bones, heavier body. They just feel like rocks. They're animals. We all know a player or a human like this in our lives. The total games matters. If you're playing more games than less games, you're getting to more 7-game series than you are closing it off in 4, that luck and genetic factor starts wearing in on you more and more. The length of the games matters. How many times are you going to overtime, period after period? The more time you spend on the ice and the more those average minutes on ice increase, the more chance there's going to be wear and tear on your body, and the more chance your luck is going to finally run out. And then finally, the last piece about it is your body composition, your BMI. Your size matters at the end of the day. This is all physics. Your weight plus your speed goes ahead and equals bone crunching hits, and it adds up in the playoffs. So now that we know why heavy hockey matters and people talk about it so much because of time and space, intensity, and then physical wear and tear, let's talk about two key players that have been under the microscope. How about Johnny Hockey, Mr. Johnny Gaudreau, and Mitch Marner? These guys have disappeared in the playoffs over the last 4 or 5 years. Fans know it. Fans of those teams know it. They think this year is going to be different. But if we go ahead and pull up their performance in the regular season versus the playoffs, we see the regular season in black, we see the playoffs in red, and you can see Gaudreau on the top, Marner on the bottom. When you look at the years that they were in the playoffs, their points per 60 or goals per 60 on the left-hand side, points per 60 in the middle, you can see they drastically take a hit. Look at Gaudreau. He hasn't scored in the last 3 playoffs he's been in. 16-17, 18-19, 19-20. No goals. That is not like Johnny Hockey. Mitch Marner, same thing is well documented. The last 2 playoffs, there have been no goals. You compare that against his regular season, and it is very clear to see when you look at this graph why fans of those teams were calling for these players' heads and saying they can't get it done in the playoffs. These are some of the smallest, lightest guys on the ice. But I mean, that's only 2 guys, so is it really holding true? Well, Dom Lucigen goes ahead and gives us this graph, and when we take a look at these graphs made by Dom, I react to it and go, okay, here is the point differential total compared to the regular season. And what we see here is a whole bunch of negatives. This isn't an upside down graph. And this is ranking players in percentiles of 5. So on the left side, you have the 0 to 5th percentile, the smallest players in hockey. And on the right side, you have 95 to the 100th percentile, the biggest players in playoffs in the hockey. And these are their point totals. And what you can see is every line here that isn't red, there's not really a trend. It doesn't seem to matter how big you are anywhere in these gray bars. It seems to be kind of random. Everybody's point totals go down, and they go down because getting goals in the playoffs is just harder than it is in the regular season for all the reasons we've mentioned. But there's an outlier. The bottom 5% of players, the smallest players in the NHL over the last 11 years, oh boy, they have not done super well. They are definitely an outlier, negative 0.85 points. So there is something to be said about guys like Johnny Hockey and Mitch Marner. They fall into this category. There is something to be said about those players not showing up and not performing in the playoffs compared to the rest of their peers. And who are these small players that we're talking about? Well, here's a list of the guys that end up in that category: Gaudreau, Marner, Girard, Zuccarello, Spurgeon, Panarin, and Gryzelak. These are all elite players. And if you check out a lot of my videos that I've been doing on our series leading up to the playoffs, I've talked about all these players at some point being elite or dynamic players for their team. So they are super important. They're game-breaking players in the NHL, but when the playoffs show up, they go to sleep. And the way I can infer that is very simply, if you're in that bottom 5% of size, your point production dips below anybody else in the NHL, way more than anyone bigger than these guys. But the story actually gets worse over the last 4 years. If I bring up the same graph, Dom has broken it down over the last 4 years from 2018 to 2021, and the hit is even worse. The guys who are in this category have gone to sleep even more. That is absolutely mind-blowing. So again, there aren't a lot of trends with anybody else except maybe the top. You can see the top's a bit of an outlier, but there are guys close to the heaviest guys on the right side of the NHL scattered all throughout the middle. But the guys who are in the bottom 5% of weight, they're not doing so well. And that can be seen here in the weight of NHL playoff teams from 2010 to 2021. You can see that the weight of the average grouping of teams in the playoffs, these are all NHL playoff teams. Weigh them all, see where they end up. You can see it's only increased. And look, in the last 4 years, it is the heaviest it's ever been. So from 2018 to 2021, what does that tell us? It tells us as the league gets bigger and heavier, this bottom 5th percentile got worse and worse and worse. That's a scary thought. And if we go ahead and pull up this chart from Dom, what it is doing, it is measuring the physicality of teams by the amount of hits they throw and the heaviness of teams by their combined weight of all their starting rostered players. And what you can see is the higher you go on the graph, the more physical you are. The heavier you go on the graph, the more to the right side you go. So in the upper right-hand corner, that's the most heavy physical teams. And these are the NHL Stanley Cup winners over the last 11 years. And you see 2 Tampa Bay Lightning teams in the upper right quadrant, big, and physical. You see 2 LA King teams in there. We know they were big and physical. They were mean under Daryl Sutter. You see the Washington Capitals and you see the St. Louis Blues, the last 4 Stanley Cup winners, the Bolts, the Blues, and the Caps. They've been monsters. And then if you look on the left side, you see the skill teams of the Pittsburgh Penguins and the Chicago Blackhawks, even that Boston Bruins team. They have been smaller, they've been more skilled, and they've been more passive. They've also been lighter. All the gray dots you see in the middle, that is every Stanley Cup winner in history. So what does the graph tell you? It really tells you that you can win the Stanley Cup at any size, at any time in the NHL. The era is well distributed. There's no pattern. But when you look at the top 4 teams who have won in the last 4 years, you might start scratching your head because the NHL is a copycat league and go, I guess if a Stanley Cup team is getting bigger, we should all get bigger. And it's showing in the data for the last 4 teams that have won the cup. Well, how about the teams in the rest of the playoffs, not just the Stanley Cup teams? We'll bring up the exact same graph. Physicality is up top, heaviness is on the right. And what we see is all the teams that have been in the playoffs over the last 11 years, again, it's been a spread. You have small, speedy, and skilled. You have big, heavy, and physical, could also be skilled. But you can see it's everywhere. And if you look at the blue dot, these are the top 4 teams at the end of the Stanley Cup playoffs, the Eastern and Western Conference teams. When you take a look at the blue dots, you can see they're scattered all over as well too. So if you want to make a deep run into the playoffs, if you want to make it to the conference finals, you can have any composition of physicality and weight. But when you take a look at the conference finalists from 2018 to 2021 in the red dots, you can see they heavily favor the top right corner. Most of them are heavy and physical. So the conclusion that we can see from this data over the last little bit, and if you're thinking of this already in your mind, is, does heavy hockey work? The answer is yes, but I'm going to say if players allow it. So right now we are saying heavy hockey works because we can see the clear trends over the last couple of years, but I'm going to tell you that it's only been 4 years. We have a lot more data to take a look at. We've all been around this game for quite some time. So heavy hockey only works if players allow it. So with that being said, you might be wondering, all right, coach, so how do you counteract heavy hockey? If you were coaching a team that was small and not physical, but maybe very skilled and in the playoffs, how do you react to it? How do you overcome it? And it's very simple. Instinct plus mindset goes ahead and features into your skill. So you have instinct when you're playing hockey. What plays should you make at the time without thinking it through? This is why you go through practice and you're in the gym and you're shooting pucks and you're passing pucks. Your instinct takes over. And what is your mindset? What is your mindset like when you get popped in the face, whether it's a fight, whether it's a hit? When you listen to that old Rocky Balboa quote,
but it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done.
It is so true, as cheesy as Sly Stallone is. It is how you go forward and what is your mindset when you go forward. If you have the proper instincts and you've done the work and the practice, if you have the right mindset, your skill will take over and counteract heavy hockey. So let's talk about instinct itself, the anticipation of time and space. That is what instinct is. It is your anticipation of the play and your utilization of time and space. And we've already discussed it. In the playoffs, there's less time and space, and the reffing makes this even harder on you because we know when we saw Connor McDavid play my Jets last year, not a single penalty was drawn by Connor McDavid. He was clutched, grabbed, slashed, cross-checked, all of it, and the Jets got away with it every single time. So we know the time and space gets less. That means a player has to go into the playoffs and a coach and a team have to recreate that mentality in practice before the playoffs and during the regular season, where they're thinking about their time and space and they're finding drills and pieces in practice to go ahead and basically get a player ready for playing in smaller spaces. Small area games in practice are a great way to do that, not just drills. Take away players' time and space and make them use their instincts with less of it. You can recreate that both safely and fun in practice. So then let's go ahead and talk about the mindset piece of this. When you're thinking about mindset, it's really simple. What do you do when you get hit? Are you afraid of it? Are you thinking about it? Do you hear footsteps in the back of your head, or are you shrugging it off like nothing? There are 3 key ways that you can set your mindset in and around your team that can help you get through heavy and physical hockey. Number one is leadership on the team. You got to know your teammates have your back. That's why it's so important. You hear Leafs fans talk about this all the time because they're just panicked about exiting on the first round again this year, and I don't blame them. You got to talk about that core leadership in your team. Do you have the guys in the room, not just the C's and the A's, that make you really believe they have your back and that if anybody touches you, you're going to go forward? Look, I'm wearing the Ukrainian hat with the Ukrainian letters behind me right now. We're flagging out the yellow and the blue. We know the Russians outnumbered us. We know the Russians were massive, but the Ukrainians as a whole had the mindset to know that they have each other's backs. They knew it. 100% united against the enemy. That is a powerful tool when you're going to war, and it's a powerful tool in a hockey game. Scoring, you got to find a way to get through the muck. Again, you got to practice like you're going to play, and coaches can recreate this, but you got to get through the muck. You got to throw off the hits and the checks and the clutch and the grabbing and the holding. You got to battle your way through it. And then finally, you got to battle away, which means you got to keep moving. You can't stop moving. Always forward, always forward, always forward. Your feet, your head, and your hands. We talk about this as coaches. You may think as a fan that we're going to talk about head on a swivel or look where you're going before. We don't. We talk about moving your feet in the right direction first. Feet can't stand still. Your feet need to go before anything else. So feet, feet, feet. Then you use your head to go ahead and shoulder check and see your surroundings, and your time and space is less. So when your time and space is less in the playoffs, moving your feet gives you a little bit more time and space to play with. Then you move your head, and then you start moving your hands. So that leaves us to our last bit. It's instinct and it's mindset. And what does that bring us to? How do you beat heavy hockey? You get this mindset going. You're getting hit, buddy. Deal with it. It's that simple. You can't avoid it. You can't run away from it. You're going to get hit. You're going to get slashed. You're going to get grabbed. You're going to get clutched. What are you going to do about it? And how are you going to get through it? Because nobody is going to save you from it. Your team may have your back. They may back you up, but you're still going to get that initial piece of contact. Well, why don't we go ahead and use one of the smallest but pestiest players in the playoffs, Brad Marchand, to show us a mindset of how small players and every player in the NHL needs to battle and get through it in the playoffs. We all remember this play, don't we? Marchand, low bridge, oof, big one, gloves down, here we go. That is the mindset you need in the playoffs. Now, a lot of you will remember that, and many of you will think that's cheap. I'm not here to tell you whether it's cheap or not cheap. I'm here to tell you with the mindset of that entire play within Brad Marchand shows you how he was ready to deal with it and how he wasn't going to let people push him around. And if anything, he was going to push back. And let's go ahead and slow this down. You see that Marchand makes that move. Look, the foot gets stuck out. Marchand chips it around him and he ends up dancing around the outside and the player ends up eating it right there. Marchand also knows now when we talk about time and space, the puck is down here in the corner. This is time and space. This is a Sedin coming in, and Marchand knows he has very little time and space because he's going into a corner. This is technically a 2-on-1. You could call it a 3-on-1, but one player is already bitten the dust by Aspen Dental here. So you have a 2-on-1 here, and Marchand is prepared for the worst. What you see here is Marchand moving his feet. He changes the direction. He keeps his momentum going. So we talk about it. Feet, feet, feet. Gets the puck, and now he's thinking head on a swivel. He's looking for it. He realizes his time and space is gone. Sedin's taken it away. So he makes a decision to ensure he keeps his time and space, and it is a low bridge, and that is a nasty hit. Legal or illegal, and you know it's illegal because that hand was up immediately. Doesn't matter. Now Marchand makes a very key decision here, and that's to drop the gloves. He goes, I know it's coming. The just desserts are coming in, and I ain't backing down from this, and I'm not going to let you intimidate me in the playoffs. Plays like this turned around that entire series for Vancouver. He's not the biggest guy, and Sedin is way taller than Marchand. We all remember this one too. Marchand punching Sedin 6 times. Look at the size difference on this one. I'm not telling you this is right or wrong, but I am telling you that this is the mindset you need to go in the playoffs with if you want to beat heavy hockey and you're a small guy. Look, whether or not the refs are going to let it go, call a penalty, or irrelevant, it was plays like both of those from Marchand that turned this series in favor for the Bruins. The Vancouver Canucks realized really quickly that even though they were bigger, than the Boston Bruins at that time. They were not badder, and they were going to get pushed around by the Bruins. You can even remember Tim Thomas laying a hit as a goalie on the Vancouver Canucks. So the mindset and your instinct matters a lot, and small teams can overcome big teams in the playoffs. So does size matter in the playoffs? Maybe. It very well may be, but mindset and instinct and skill can overcome it any day of the week, as long as your team has your back and as long as you're willing to pay the price in the playoffs. So that being said, where does your team stack up going into the playoffs? Well, here's our final chart of the day. And you can see here that the Bruins and the Flames, no surprise, the Bruins have become a lot bigger since then, are the most aggressive and heavy teams out there. The St. Louis Blues are big but not aggressive. The Rangers and the Capitals are medium sized, maybe a little bit on the heavier side, but reasonably aggressive. The LA Kings, averagely aggressive. The Stars, the Wild, the Hurricanes, over aggressive. The Predators, hyper aggressive. There's no question about it. So you got your big teams, you got your aggressive teams, and then you have your teams that are both, and that's the Flames and the Bruins. So if you really believe in size and aggressiveness, those are the two teams you should be banking on in the playoffs this year. And teams like Florida, teams like Pittsburgh, teams like Toronto, teams like Edmonton, you may want to stay away from those teams because they're not big, nor are they aggressive, if you truly believe that size matters as much as you may or may not believe heading into the Stanley Cup playoffs. Look, everyone, thanks for being here. I hope we've given you some great insight onto the playoffs this year. We've talked about rosters. We've talked about format. We've talked about size. We've talked about goalies. We've talked about talent. Keep it tuned here. Subscribe, join us. We're going to talk about a ton more here when it comes to hockey.